And Treasurer, welcome there. Thank you very much for joining us on our first day outing of Your Money.
Good afternoon, Ticky. Nice to be with you.
All right. Well, look, I know you've been out and about on the Royal Commission today in that interim report. Were you surprised that the bank shares went up so strongly on Friday? I mean, it didn't even include what Commissioner Haynes thought about super or insurance. It was just lending and financial advice. And the banks all seemed pretty happy with the fact that there were not likely to be any major new regulation.
Well, they must have had pretty low expectations as to what was in the report, because I think it was a frank and scathing assessment of the conduct and the culture and the compliance of the sector, and Commissioner Haynes sent a very strong message that the status quo is not good enough. And while he was careful about the need for more regulation, because we already have a complex regulatory environment, he was very clear that more enforcement and better enforcement needs to take place. And he directed, as you know, his attention at ASIC in respect to the way they preferred negotiation over litigation.
Well, a lot of blame put onto ASIC and indeed APRA. Do you think ASIC and APRA suffered from what is called industry capture at all?
Well, certainly they have been close to industry, and from what has come through in the report, it's clear that perhaps too close, because what we know is that ASIC has had a very high success rate with the cases that they've taken through the courts, more than a 90% success rate, but they preferred to negotiate or to put in place infringement notices or to issue a press release rather than take the necessary next step, which is to prosecute. And that is something that they no doubt will work closely with the Commonwealth DPP on.
Do you think, though, there's a chance that they were looking at the chances of them being successful? I mean, I'm looking at that recent bank breach report that ASIC put out, and I spoke to James Shipton about it. Now, 5 years to report a significant breach to rectify it, an average of 5 years, the banks. It turns out that actually it's pretty impossible to criminally charge, because the standard of proof of what is a significant breach is too subjective. Now, have we got the regulations right, the law right?
Well, Commissioner Haynes would indicate that the laws are there, they just need to be properly enforced. And while you can't legislate morality, what you can do is properly and effectively enforce the laws that we do have. And I know that James Shipton and ASIC are currently looking at their internal processes and the management of these cases, and Daniel Crennan, who we have appointed as effectively a special prosecutor within ASIC, Daniel Crennan QC, will have primary responsibility for this internal review and improving the practices when it comes to taking enforcement action.
What about the carve-up between the regulators? Because it seemed before that APRA was in charge of the prudential side. Now the government has given APRA responsibility for BEAR, the Bank Executive Accounting regulation. Alan Fels, Professor Alan Fels, says the government might need an Inspector General like it's got for the ATO to supervise ASIC and APRA, because the government really lacks expertise in this space. Would you look at that?
Oh, look, there are a lot of ideas that are swirling around. Let's wait and see what the final recommendations from the Commissioner look like when we expect them in February of next year. But quite clearly we have regulators whose job it is to hold people to account. And if you're not holding people to account, then you can't create that culture, Ticky, of compliance, which has obviously been lacking.
It's very tricky, though, because on the other hand, you've got the possibility that if you go too hard, you might undermine your banking system. You're watching rate rises, presumably in the US. You're watching the wholesale funding situation.
Well, certainly we are when it comes to out-of-cycle rate rises, and you know, a number of the banks did recently move in that direction, and we said it was incumbent on them to explain to their own customers as to why that was the case, because we're not happy when rates rise in that respect. But when it comes to the future regulatory structure when it comes to the responses to the Royal Commission. Let's just wait and see for their final report.
So, Treasurer, when you look at those Labor attack ads on the Prime Minister at the moment, again and again refusing to look at a Royal Commission, you've got an election coming. From the banking community side, there's a worry that there might be quite a lot of brinkmanship leading to a government needing to appear to be even tougher than Labor might have been, and in a way, as happened in energy, you actually gave Rod Sims more powers than he was even asking for to break up the gentailers. Is there a worry that you might go too far and actually risk the financial system?
Well, Ticky, this report made it very clear that the banks were putting profits before people, that there was greed as the prime motive here, that the focus was on selling products and services, and that we need to get back to producing products and services that are fit for purpose, that they need to be delivered with reasonable care and skill, and that those who are practicing in the financial sector need to obey the law and not mislead or deceive. That's what Commissioner Hayne has said. So we'll do everything that is necessary to restore the public's trust and confidence in the financial sector, which is such a strong and vital part of our economy. But I too am conscious that in implementing the recommendations out of the Royal Commission next year, we need to pay particular focus to ensuring that credit continues to be provided in a cost-effective way to businesses and to households, and that we preserve competition, because competition is good for consumers.
All right. Just moving to the final budget numbers that you put out the other day, very good set. You've got strong commodities and jobs numbers. Any chance that this MYEFO, this mid-year outlook, will turn into a mini budget, do we think, in December?
Oh, look, the MYEFO will come out as expected and as is traditionally the case in December, after the December national accounts numbers. But you're right to point to the strong economic performance. We had national accounts which showed that the economy was growing at 3.4% through the year, which is faster than any time since the height of the mining boom in 2012. We had S&P reaffirm our AAA credit rating, and now we've had the smallest budget deficit in a decade.
So you've got the revenue coming in. Can you clear up for me, Treasurer, the rules on government revenues and budget spending, which, as I understand it, was as far as possible being matched? The Prime Minister seemed to indicate that there were exceptions and he would have discretion. Well, Chris Bowen from Shadow Treasurer has come out today and said the new Prime Minister has confirmed the Liberals' fiscal and budget repair strategy is completely meaningless, and while fiscal rules remain, they're there to be broken.
Well, I wouldn't pay too much attention to a Chris Bowen press release. That will be fish and chip wrapper tomorrow. I mean, the Labor Party talking about budget surpluses. I mean, the last one they delivered was in 1989 when the Berlin Wall was still standing. So,
well, they promised bigger surpluses, but bigger taxes, bigger spending.
Well, this is not the comedy show. This is a real-life discussion about the economy, and those sort of promises from Labor are not worth the paper that they're written on. I mean, the reality is we have put in place budget rules where new spending is offset by savings, where ministers are expected to bring that to the table. Our rules have not changed, but as the Prime Minister said on the Insiders program on Sunday, there continues to be some discretion there. But the real focus for us is on fiscal discipline. Our rules have not changed, and our fiscal discipline has produced the good numbers that we've got at the moment.
Finally, can I just move to the area of foreign investment, because the Treasurer does have a role there sometimes. Now, we've got APA, this enormous pipeline company, under offer from CKI, the Hong Kong company. That FIRB is considering that. Now, if FIRB give this deal the green light, would you knock this back? I mean, as a former energy minister, would you knock this back on the basis of national interest, given quite how much sight you have on the whole of the energy sector if you own APA?
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on the specifics of particular deals. that may be going through that process. But what I will say is that foreign investment has served Australia very well. We do have a savings gap when it comes to the infrastructure needs, and we would never have developed the Pilbara or the Northwest Shelf, or indeed a few golf courses across the Sunshine or Gold Coasts without foreign investment. But what we do need is to continue to put all such proposals through a strict national interest test. The public would expect that of us, and that is what governments of both political persuasions have done in the past and will continue to do so in the future.
And so finally, do you have a specific public interest test which is related to Chinese investment as opposed to other foreign investment at the moment, given Huawei and various
We have a broad national interest test, and it doesn't matter from which country or from which organisation the proposals come, they go through the same national interest test.
Josh Breidenberg, Treasurer, thank you very much for coming on the show and the first day of your money. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Always good to join you, and happy to do so in the future too.